Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special Monday afternoon edition of the PHLY Eagles podcast. Bo Wulf, Zach Berman, and when the Eagles make news, we got to talk about it. And there is a lot to talk about, Zach. Great news for the Eagles. It sounds as if Avonte Maddox may return this season.
I did not expect it to start that way, but yeah, busy 24 hours. I boarded a flight.
What a beautiful backdrop you've set up. You are the king of the backdrop. You've done a really nice job with the Seattle skyline there. Couldn't get the Space Needle in, huh?
No, I had the Space Needle here, but I couldn't position. The desk doesn't move, and I would have had to put the laptop on the bed, and so it just wouldn't. It wasn't stable that way. Bad angle. So yeah, we have to. So this will have to suffice.
Ooh, that must have been a difficult. That must have sort of eaten you up for a couple minutes.
I spent about 20 minutes working on the backdrop before I came on. Before I had the StreamYard link, I was doing FaceTime, and then and the FaceTime and the StreamYard, I guess the camera is a little different. So in any event, busy 24 hours here. I boarded the flight to Seattle yesterday morning, and I log on to Wi-Fi to do some work, and all of a sudden, Jalen Hurts is downgraded, right? And then, boom, this shakeup on the coaching staff during a week when Nick Sirianni said there was not going to be any coaching changes or change in responsibilities. So we all know by now. I would tell everyone, make sure you read Bo's column from yesterday. Bo and I discussed doing an emergency pod yesterday. We thought on a Sunday the column worked well, and then we would reconvene today. People are in front of their computers, they're at work. But for those who kind of want the quick 30-second summation, this is what's happening. Matt Patricia will be on the field calling the plays. Sean Desai will be in the press box observing the defense.
Hanging out?
Yes.
Playing on his iPad? What's he going to be doing?
Yeah. As far as we know, well, we do know Sean Desai is still technically the defensive coordinator. So as far as we know, Sean Desai will be the voice of this defense, for which he is not calling, for which he is no longer overseeing. It's an odd situation here that we will get into. But for all intents and purposes, Matt Patricia is now in charge of the Eagles defense.
Okay, we have so much to discuss here. But can I actually ask you, do you think that Sean Desai is going to give the press conference this week?
I do. I mean,
that is so stupid. Not you thinking that they're going to do that. What is going on?
Yeah, I mean, now the press conference is like the least important part of this. I get, but it is kind of odd to be throwing Sean Desai out there talking about a unit that he's no longer in charge of.
Meanwhile, they have hidden Matt Patricia the entire time. He has never once spoken to the media, despite many requests, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because it's all like, he's a lightning rod. Like, we don't want to distract from the other stuff. Now this guy's in charge. He's going to be on the sideline calling plays. Like, what is going on?
Well, you do wonder if he was always there for this possibility, right?
You certainly do.
And we can get into that. But let's just rewind. Let's rewind real quick and think about Jonathan Gannon leaves after the Super Bowl. And at that point, Vic Fangio had already accepted the job with the Miami Dolphins. The Eagles are a little late in the defensive coordinator search, but they do a search here. And the top in-house candidate is Denard Wilson. They interview a number of out of market candidates or out of team candidates, out of house candidates, including college defensive coordinators who are having a lot of success this year in Michigan, Georgia. But they settle, or I shouldn't say they settle, they choose Sean Desai. And at the time, Sean Desai seemed like a really intriguing hire. He has defensive coordinator experience. He has the Philly background. He worked for Vic Fangio, a scheme that the Eagles clearly admire. He's a young, up-and-coming coach. It certainly made a lot of sense from that perspective. And the reviews were positive throughout the spring and summer. And by the way, for much of the season. I mean, the Miami game, we were talking about the great second half that he had. They win the Kansas City game because of him. In these past 2 weeks, the defense falls apart, and here the Eagles are not making any changes on the offensive side of the ball, making changes entirely on the defensive side of the ball with Sean Desai.
Well, if we're doing the timeline, they hire Desai in February. And then in April, 2 months later, they bring in Matt Patricia as senior defensive analyst, right? And, what is your understanding of how that process came down? Like, who was pushing for Matt Patricia to join the staff?
Yeah, I've heard actually different opinions on this. So I don't want to say that, it was. I've heard people, or I've heard someone say it was how he's doing. I heard someone say it was Nick's doing. So I don't have that locked down. I mean, there is a relationship with some of the people on this staff, including, Jeff Stoutland, I believe, has a background with Matt Patricia. Nick Sirianni said during the summer that he really wanted to bring in someone from that Belichick coaching tree, someone he always admired. And the reality is the Eagles' defensive coaching staff is really inexperienced from like an NFL level, right? I mean, the Eagles hired a linebackers coach from the college level. They promoted DK McDonald as the secondary coach, and
because they let Denard Wilson leave.
Yes, and he had a college background. He's good friends with Nick Sirianni, and he's been with the Eagles the past 2 years. Tracy Rocker has been an NFL position coach, but he's mostly been in college. So you're looking at all three levels of the defense. It's not like you have these really strong tenured NFL position coaches, right? And then Sean Desai has been a defensive coordinator for 1 year before. So in theory, here's Matt Patricia, former defensive coordinator and de facto offensive coordinator, and a former head coach who famously combated with one of your most high-profile players. And you bring him in, and by the way, Matt Patricia has baggage in Philadelphia from the fact that the Eagles won the Super Bowl against him, right? So the Eagles bring him in, and he's supposed to add kind of this experience to the defensive room and help out. I would say the whole coaching staff, but you do wonder now, was he in place in case this did not work with Sean Desai?
I think it's impossible to believe that was not the case. Whether it was like, we expect to hit this button, which I doubt, but like we need a plan B, because you said there is no other guy on the defense who seems, ready for that job. It is not Vic Fangio was not in the building, but as a consultant, probably for a similar reason. And whether that was like if things implode or if he leaves, like we want this in-house replacement ready. You're planning ahead. That makes sense. They didn't have a guy to do that with. Now Matt Patricia is not Vic Fangio. He is not John Fox or these other consigliere guys who have a long track record of successful defense. He has run 10 defenses if you count the 7 years as a defensive coordinator with the Patriots and the 3 years as a head coach with the Lions, and he has never once led a top 10 defense by DVOA, never once. So this is not like some defensive savant. On the flip side, my understanding from talking to people since he got there was like, oh wow, this guy is not who I thought he was. Like he's like a nice guy, like a good presence in the office. He is helpful, but not overstepping. Like it seems like he's like, happy to be here. So that's one data point. But the way that this week was handled, Zach, is so pathetic, and it is like bad organization 101 stuff. So Nick Sirianni on Tuesday morning, or Tuesday afternoon rather, the first question of his press conference from Tim McManus is, "Are you considering any changes to the coaching staff?" And he says no, and he's really huffy about it. It's like the idea that would be proposed is like, how dare you? And Tim asked for for further explanation, and he gives, I'm comfortable with what we have in the building. All week long, that is the same tenor coming from Sirianni and the organization. How dare you question anything that we're doing? We went to the Super Bowl last year. We're 10-3. We control our own destiny. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, they're completely changing the defensive coaching staff. Now, there are reasons. The defense has not been good lately. We know that. We have talked about it ad nauseum, right? They are the worst third down defense in the league, despite the fact that opposing offenses have the second longest yardage to go on third down. Like they are terrible on third down. They have been terrible the last 2 weeks. They gave up 9 touchdowns and a field goal on 10 consecutive drives in the 2 most important games of the season. We know all of that. There are, I think, like reasons to think that there were disagreements behind the scenes. We've talked about the defensive line rotation, knowing that like Desai is the only variable there that's different, and they're treating this differently than they have ever done under Howie Roseman and especially under Nick Sirianni. I think there were probably disagreements on that front, but to have this this posture, and I know that there are people who are like, well, why should I care about the press conferences? That it doesn't bother me. Like they're doing this because they think it's going to give them a competitive advantage and like whatever. I don't agree with that because like when somebody just sits up there and lies, it is not something that's going to last. You see this. I mean, like any bad organization, bad head coach who is going down, like this huffiness, it's not going to last. Like, where is the steady hand? And, I wrote the column. I used the Fletcher Cox, the calmer you are, the calmer we are. I mean, they're running around behind the scenes like their hair is on fire. It's insane. The Cowboys lost yesterday. They're in first place in the NFC East. All they got to do is take care of business. Like, you didn't want to just see what would happen after you got through that gauntlet. Could Sean Desai turn things around? I don't even know. I'm not even saying it's the wrong move necessarily. But the way that it was handled to let this thing just like come out on a Sunday morning when you know it's going to come out, like that's the team spin of it. And then there's a little bit more of a honest reporting by Jay Glazer on it. It's just like, it is so dramatic. Why does this team at 10-3, you can't just take a loss? Like it's bizarre.
Yeah. So 3 points here. Number one, I agree with you in terms of the optics, and I'm not one who says, yeah, like I understand press conferences that Nick Sirianni tries for competitive advantage. They don't always tell the truth, but context does matter here. This is an organization that, in 2020, Doug Peterson says Mike Rowe's coming back. A few days later, Mike Rowe's hired. I'm sorry, Mike Rowe and Carson Walsh are fired, and thereafter, it really made it seem as if the coach is not in charge, right? That people above the coach are in charge here. So the context does matter here, right?
Well, listen, in that, I will be a self-parody here. I will bring up Christian Ellis. Okay, 2 weeks ago they lose to the Niners. The first press conference of the week, Nick Sirianni comes out and goes out of his way to say how well Christian Ellis played in that game. 2 days later, he's waived. The next week, he comes out in the first press conference. He says, we're not making any changes. Turns out they're making a crazy change. And so either he's lying or he's not the one making decisions. And neither one of those two things is suggestive of longevity.
Or suggestive of the power that a coach or I guess I shouldn't say the power, the control that a coach like Nick Sirianni should have, whether it's the public messaging control of it or it's the organizational control of it. So that's number one. Number two, the Eagles did this in the past in 2021. Nick Sirianni gave up play calling, and it did not come out until after the season. So perhaps they thought that like they can keep things in-house, which is extraordinarily hard to do in 2022. And I don't think those examples are apples for apples because Knicks don't manage the game. Like we don't quite know what Sean Desai is doing. And number three, look, I get it that this can be a cold business, and I need to kind of leave my I don't want to. It sounds haughty to say like my ethical approach at the door, but like there's a certain way of treating people, and I feel like they did Sean Desai dirty here, right? Like Sean Desai is not going to get another defensive coordinator job in the NFL at this. Like he's been. I shouldn't say that definitively, but
he's going to ride out. I think it's a 4-year contract, right? He'll just be the in the booth reading a book, defensive coordinator by title for 4 years.
He's essentially been neutered here, right? And so I do feel as if as if they did him dirty, right? And I do wonder how that comes across going forward here. Now, this is a cold business, and I put out today, and it's the reality of this. In 2012, the Baltimore Ravens at 9-4, so around the same time, I think it was December 10th, they fire Cam Cameron, their offensive coordinator. They promote Jim Caldwell, and they go on and they win the Super Bowl. And John Harbaugh at the time, he talked about that the acronym that I've said on this show, WIN, W-I-N, what's important now. And he said, and his essential message was, it's not about being fair. It's not about right or wrong. Like, the goal was to win, and they needed to make a change. And one could argue the Eagles needed to make a change. And perhaps there was stuff behind the scenes, like the Eagles wanted alterations to their scheme. I mean, maybe they did not want the defensive linemen to stunt as much as they did. They wanted the pass rush to look, the way it has more in the past. Perhaps they wanted more of a rotation there. Perhaps they wanted the coverage to look different. Perhaps they wanted more experience on third downs, in some situational football, right? And
those are all reasonable.
And we don't know if Desai was resistant to some of this, and perhaps that was the impetus for the change, right? I get all that. But I don't think they came across here looking like an organization that's in control. They looked like I don't want to use the term dysfunctional because I think that can be overstated. But they looked overreactive, and they looked like an organization that did not have control of the message. Which is like, I get it. I see in the chat here, the media doesn't matter, but public messaging is a big part of professional football. They would tell you that, right? The way this is, and because I should also say, public messaging is not only to you, the fans. Public messaging is also to the league. It's to the other coaches. It's to the other teams. It's to the other organizations, right? And you want to come across as functional with it. If they had made the change earlier in the week, perhaps we criticize. Perhaps they take some heat. But it's
be adults about it. Announce the decision. Like, to your point, like I don't think that it's like how dare you lie to the media. It's just that it's reflective of this, this philosophy that they have right now, which is like, how dare you, but also like, what are we going to do? We got to change something. Like, the reasons that you're talking about on defense, those are all real things. And if they went to Desai and said, we need these things changed, and he said no, and they believe that those are the right things, then that's fine. You got to do what you got to do. But like, be a man about it. Don't don't pee on everybody's face and tell them it's raining and say, like, thank you for the rain. Like, what are we doing here? Be adults.
Well said. Yeah, well said. Well said. Yeah, I mean, I would say come across functional and in control as opposed to overreactive. And that's how I would frame it.
I just like the steady hand that you need over the long haul to maintain success is very clearly not here. I think it is. There is
also expand on that, because I'm not sure I agree with you there. I mean, I would say that an organization that's made the postseason now 3 years in a row, 6 or 7 of the last 8 years. I would say there is very much a steady hand, right? Like there is a thread here that they are far more successful than other organizations, and they can be ruthless about it at times. I mean, Jeffrey Lurie said when Doug Peterson was fired, this is not about deserve. Doug Peterson did not deserve to be fired. He said, but there was a difference in vision and they had to make a change. And that probably turned out to be better for the organization. They fired Chip Kelly after 2 10-6 seasons, and then a 6. He was 6-9 at one point, and they fired him. They've made coordinator moves. I mean, Sean McDermott, right? This is an organization that they can be ruthless there, but that's part of professional football. But I would push back on the idea that they're not a steady organization. I actually think they have a steadiness to them, which is probably one of their better attributes.
I think where I'm coming from is not from a Jeffrey Lurie standpoint. It is
Okay.
from the coaching standpoint. Like, either Nick Sirianni is flailing around about how to fix this thing. And by the way, let's blame the defense and don't look at how the offense is not holding up its end of the bargain.
Yeah.
Or this is Jeffrey Lurie and or Howie Roseman inserting influence again, which is fine. That has worked for them in the past, but that doesn't say a lot for Nick Sirianni.
No, that's fair. And also, too, just in terms of, if they had just stuck with the status quo, kept getting shredded on defense, we would probably kill them for, like, are you seeing the same things we are, right? So I get all that. To me, it's more the way it was handled, and the part of this that we will probably get to after the ad reads, and that is like, is this just rearranging chairs? Like, is Matt Patricia the answer here? Is this the type of thing where they make this change now in front of 4 relatively easier games? It looks good, but, like, did you really do much? There's a part of that I look at and say, like, is this a positive change, or is this change for change's sake?
That's a good question. Why don't you tell us what's in your wheelhouse, Zach?
I like that there, because this is the time of year when we're all looking for gifts, and the place to go if you are a card collector or just looking for a gift and apparel shop is our go-to sports card gift and apparel shop in the Delaware Valley. That is Wheelhouse. Their motto is cards and community, because love of sports unites us all. They carry all of your favorite card brands like Topps, Chrome Baseball, and Mosaic Football. They have t-shirts, hats, and hoodies from brands like Mitchell & Ness, 47 Brand, Junk Food, Starter, and Shy Vintage Sports. If you're looking to grade your sports card collection, Wheelhouse offers PSA grading submissions. They also host tons of different family-friendly events like birthday parties every month. If you stop into either of their stores, there's one in Wayne, there's one in Westchester. They're open 7 days a week at 11 a.m. Just use code PHLY. It'll get you $10 off any purchase of $25 or more in store. Also, be sure to give them a follow on Instagram at Wheelhouse Cards.
Another place you could go if you're looking for a last-minute holiday gift is FOCO, because FOCO is a leading manufacturer of sports and entertainment merchandise with a product line that includes apparel, accessories, toys, collectibles, novelty items, and more. It's the best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms. It's football and tailgating season. They've got overalls. They've got hoodies. They've got hats. They've got sunglasses. They've got bags. Everything you need for a game. FOCO has hooked PHLY up and provided awesome pieces for our sets. FOCO always has our back for Philly sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in our description. For all non-presale items, use the promo code PHLY10 for 10% off. Do you think Matt Patricia is here for the long term, Zach?
Maybe so. I suppose it depends how the next month goes, or next two and a half months go. But I would imagine that they have a defensive coordinator search in earnest this offseason. I imagine it's an attractive position, right? Although one could argue the way that Sean Desai was handled here, how attractive is it, right? I mean, how much autonomy do you truly have? But I do think that they have some good pieces in place. It's an organization that is known to pay well. You have an offensive minded coach, and there could frankly be some good candidates on the market. Some defensive coaches, some defensive head coaches who are dismissed, or maybe there's some up and coming coaches that you look at. So I'm not ready to say Matt Patricia is the guy going forward. But look, I mean, there's a very real chance the Eagles finish 14-3 or 13-4. They get the 2 seed. They go to the NFC Championship game, and then you see what happens, right? And if they do that with Matt Patricia calling the plays, it's very easy then to say like, all right, let's hand the reins to him. So that's why I'm not ready to say long term here. There's a lot to be done. I mean, there's not many changes that come in personnel, and Darius Slay, Patricia's old friend, is as you wrote in your column, he's out for a few weeks here. But
People connecting the dots, thinking that maybe those two things are connected.
I don't think so. I mean,
Slay's
been dealing with this knee injury since October, and I think from what I understand, this was like a timing thing. If you recall last year, the Eagles timed Jason Kelsey's elbow clean out to get him back for the regular season, and I think they probably looked at like how much time here before the meaningful games in the postseason, and they're like, all right, if we can do this knee scope now, you hope that this isn't going to be lingering throughout the postseason.
Do you think during Super Bowl week, Patricia will give a press conference then, or?
I'm fascinated to see how that works. I mean, he reasonally should give it here, right? Like, I understand he's not the defensive coordinator. To me, it's almost insulting.
It would be preposterous if he doesn't talk this week.
It's insulting to decide to make him the press secretary, essentially, right? I keep seeing this in the chat from Matt PD 003. I'll be as transparent as I can. Can you guys speak on, like, I keep seeing, why did the national guys get this story? National reporters are very good for a reason, number one, but it's also it's the nature of NFL media in 2023 that oftentimes if when it goes to a national reporter, you have a larger megaphone. You get this word out to the whole league, and then you can kind of control the message the way you want it sometimes, right? There's information trading going on. I would say to those who are critical, I will wear it. If you are critical of that, oftentimes we can get this confirmed within like a matter of minutes. Frankly speaking, if a local reporter reports something first, you might find out from the national reporter anyways, right? Because they have that larger megaphone. We all work to break news, and sometimes it's better to break like meaningful, this is what matters types news than transactional type stuff. But nonetheless, I'm not going to disparage any of the national reporters. They do a terrific job. They're in those seats for a reason. I would say this is also the nature of media in 2023.
Yeah. I don't think that you should feel bad about not breaking this story, Zach. You know that's not how this works.
Well, no, I get that on Twitter a lot from fans saying, why don't the local guys break it? And if you're saying, I don't want to like pretend that I don't see those comments, so I will ignore. I will acknowledge that.
Okay. Trying to decide where to go next. Do you want to talk about? Why don't we, let's talk about the other things that are going on with the Eagles first, and then we can close with some more Patricia at the end. Okay. Since we last spoke, Zach, on Friday, Darius Slay is out. Underwent shoulder surgery, as you mentioned. Cam Jurgens is out.
Shoulder, knee.
Oh, knee. Right.
Knee. Yeah. We corrected that in the story as well. Knee surgery.
Oh, thank you. And Zach Cunningham is out. So the Eagles are without 3 starters, and Jalen Hurts doesn't feel well and had to travel on a separate plane. What's your understanding of all the weird stuff that's going on here?
Well, let's start with Hurts because he's obviously the most high-profile one. He missed practice on Saturday. I was going to say Friday, the Eagles Friday, but really a Saturday, with an illness. He wasn't out there. From behind the scenes, I kind of heard that, don't worry, it's kind of precautionary. He's going to play. And then I don't think it got better overnight. I think it might have, whatever conditions. They worsened. He got downgraded to out. I'm sorry, downgraded to questionable. Downgraded to out would have been very bad. Downgraded to questionable. But he was out of the team's plane. He was put on a separate plane. Credit to John Clark from NBC Sports Philly. Got the footage from the airport. You saw Jalen Hurts getting on that plane, wearing a mask, flying out to Seattle. I can say this. I was on a flight from Newark to Seattle yesterday. Okay, but it's about the same. It's you're talking about a 6-hour flight. They're not putting Jalen Hurts on a 6-hour flight across the country just to stand on the sideline and like by himself or not by himself. He was with a team official, but flying a private plane across the country just to stand on the sideline rooting on Marcus.
I'm surprised they didn't put Desai on the plane too. Jalen, if you're going to get anybody sick, make it this guy.
Staying away from that one. I don't want anyone to get sick. So Jalen Hurts, I'm expecting him to play. We don't know what condition he's going to be in. He tends to get sick like a decent amount of Monday Night Football games. Seems like every time they're on Monday Night Football, he's dealing with something. I think of the Tampa game. There was a previous – he actually made the comment after the Tampa game that he always seems to get sick from Monday Night Football. This is not said in jest. As it was pointed out by someone to me that had this game not been moved, there's a chance Jalen might not have been able to play, right? So the Eagles might have benefited from the first ever flex game. Okay, so that's the quarterback situation. And if Jalen doesn't play, then of course Marcus Mariota would be the quarterback, but we're expecting Jalen to play.
He would start at least. He may not last very long.
Fair enough. So then you go to cornerback. Slay, we talked about the timeline a few moments ago. Where do they turn at corner? The Eagles were kind of non-committal about this publicly, but I'm expecting Kelee Ringo to get some work. Kelee Ringo, who you saw took an increased action against Dallas. Mixed results. That double penalty was bad, but I thought he looked fine otherwise, although there wasn't much it wasn't at that point. Dallas had a sizable lead, but Ringo has been impressing behind the scenes. And people keep saying a 4th-round pick. You spent a 3rd-round pick on him, right? You traded this year's 3rd-round pick to get him. So that shows the type of investment you want to make in him.
I think if some of the changes on defense were front office driven, I would expect that some of those changes would be, we want to see Nolan Smith and Kelee Ringo on the field more. Like,
that's a good point.
We drafted these guys to play. I want to see them on the field.
Yep. Yeah. And I always like to give the personal side of this too. I spoke to Kelee this week before this news came out, just about the excitement for him of coming back here to Seattle. This is his hometown. He went to high school in Arizona, but he grew up in the Seattle area. He went to Seahawks games and practices. He's going to have family and friends in the stands. So his first start could come in that situation. Will be interesting to see. He'll be in the spotlight because, as we discussed in our draft and with the Niz, they have really good wide receivers. That's the strength of this roster.
I mean, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba against James Bradbury, Kelee Ringo, and I guess Bradley Roby.
Yeah,
not great.
So then let's go to linebacker. And this is Bo Wulf music here. The Eagles missed.
Who could have seen this coming? Who could have possibly predicted this would happen?
They don't have depth. You're going to see Shaq Leonard start with Nicholas Morrow, but the decision to cut Christian Ellis continues just look confounding from a depth perspective.
The curse of Christian Ellis. All of this stuff is happening after the waiving of Christian Ellis.
Right now, the Eagles could certainly use an extra linebacker more than they can use an extra tight end who's on an expiring contract. So I am with Bo there. Then right guard, I'm expecting to see Sua Opeta in there for Cam Jurgens. I know that there was talk about, or there were questions, why not Tyler Steen?
They already made that switch, it felt like.
Yeah. Now, at the beginning of the week when they made this Steen switch, Opeta was banged up, but they certainly did want the more athletic Steen on the field. One thing that just from talking to people in the locker room was pointed out to me was they're expecting a hostile environment here tonight. Sua, who's been here for 5 years, has experience with the silent count. And maybe that's why you might say, why was Sua inactive then and goes from inactive to starting? As a reserve, Sua really doesn't have much position versatility, right? Whereas in theory, Jack Driscoll has more position versatility. I mean, Fred Johnson's a tackle. So that kind of explains why. And then Tyler Steen has position versatility. So I think that explains why Sua would go from inactive to starting.
Meanwhile, I believe Ian Rappaport is the one who reported that Geno Smith trending not likely to play tonight. More likely the Eagles would see Drew Lock. Interesting.
Yeah, this Geno injury has lingered, hasn't it? That is an interesting one to me. I don't quite. I didn't do much work on Drew Lock this week. Played decently last week, but certainly that would appear to be advantageous for the Eagles.
So how do you feel about the game itself?
So you can read our email exchange. It's exclusive for the diehards. When I say you, I'm speaking to the audience, not you, Bo. But I predicted the Eagles to win. I think
Can
the
I
Eagles
read
are
it
the
too,
better.
though?
Yes, of course you can.
Okay.
I think the Eagles are the better team. I think the Eagles. This is a tough place to play. It's a weird week. I don't know about Jalen, how he's feeling. They are missing some pieces on defense now. The Seahawks. We don't know if Devin Witherspoon's going to play, right? So they have some questions in their secondary. They're already weak at safety or weaker at safety. Jamal Adams is also questionable. Now that could be value added if he doesn't play, but we'll see. So I like the Eagles in this spot. There's a reason why they're road favorites. I think they're going to be able to move the ball. Deniz did a good job pointing out where Seattle's defense is vulnerable. Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni have to have a good plan against the zone, but I'm taking the better quarterback and the better roster, even though they're on the road.
Okay.
What about you?
I don't know. I'm worried that the Eagles are just speed running the post 2017 organizational collapse, and it's all going to happen within the span of a year instead of 3
They basically
years.
they did 2018 to 2020, all in a few months.
Season. Yeah, I feel like.
I mean, to your point,
things might be trending in that way.
They have brought in a bunch of old guys with big names. Okay. There's a coaching. There are coaching questions here.
Yes.
I can see your point here.
Okay. Well, if you want to go to the
Peters
game and you're in the Pacific Northwest checking out tickets, you can go to Game Time, because buying tickets to your favorite event should not be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. What do they have? Well, they've got flash deals on last-minute tickets. Easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. Images of seat views, lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. It's the fastest-growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. Just
2 taps.
2 taps, and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your email, to your phone. You never have to dig through your email. I missed that. They're sent to your phone, not your email, so you don't have to go through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right.
So there's one thing I just want to bring up about Nick Sirianni, which he's in his 3rd year as a head coach, and he tinkers with his staff less than any coach I've ever covered, right? His first year, he didn't fire anybody. I mean, Jim Bob Cooter left, but he didn't dismiss anyone. After last year, I don't know if we would term the Denard Wilson thing like this, firing him. It was clearly one of those things where there was support from players, and they interviewed him for secondary coach. They brought in someone from the outside, so it might have been an odd working environment. Now, maybe
and he said at the outset of that search that his biases are towards the people who have been with him already. Like, he has that familiarity bias.
Yeah, he stood by underperform. He stood by Michael Clay when special teams was struggling. I mean, I remember that question came up at the end of the season last year. He was adamant in defending Gannon when Gannon got criticism. So this is interesting too, because Nick has been very much not the firing type or not the shaking things up type. He's been much more like, these are my guys. Like, Nick's more of a foxhole guy
than he
is. Yeah. So this is either a different side of Nick that we haven't seen, or like you've alluded to and we've discussed, it came from above him.
But the flip side is we also know that Nick is loyal to those guys, but he's also very hard on his coaches from everything we've been told. And he will put those guys through the ringer. So I don't know how that factors in here. We just don't know. Now there's also the possibility that this is like a player driven thing, right? You talked about the stunts and twists on the defensive line. Maybe the defensive linemen are like, let us just go rush the passer, and they're running that up the chain. And
Josh Sweat, Josh Sweat had critical comments after the game last week. Yep. Right.
So the truth is we don't know exactly how it all went down, and I look forward to hearing a little bit more about it. I'm curious to hear from. I mean, the Eagles could win the game tonight, 70-0, and the first question is going to be to Nick, like, what happened this week?
Yeah, that's like I get that the fans who are like press conferences don't matter, but the entire press conference tonight is going to be about this change. That's why you get ahead of the message when you do, right? So like win or lose tonight, this is what it's going to be. This is the story: is this change in defense. It's now, as a quick aside, does Patricia have the pencil tonight?
That's such a good question. I mean, it's his whole thing, right?
It's his thing. Yeah, we haven't seen him on the field, but yeah.
Honestly, I actually think that's going to be a big deal.
You think so?
I think if he sticks with the pencil, it's like, I think that's a bad sign. It's like, oh, here I am, Matt Patricia, back in charge again. My old Belichickian ways. But if this is a new Matt Patricia, a humbled Matt Patricia, maybe no pencil is the sign that things are going to be different this time around.
Okay, so pay attention. Maybe that could have been, in our old days, that could have been a swooper.
Yeah, that's good. I don't know. Does this change how you generally feel about the team?
You know what? I don't mind action like this. Like I said, I do think they did decide dirty, but I don't want to speak out of both sides of my mouth. It was more the way this went down, like not even like the side not even getting a full season. But if you thought that the defense has been these past two games were really bad. Now, I would argue that they played two really good teams, that you have to kind of look at it over the entire scope of the season. But the context of this year's team is, what are they going to do in the postseason? I've been saying it since the spring and summer. This is like a fast forward to the playoff team. And if you looked at these past two games and you're like, I don't have confidence in this defense scheming against the 49ers and the Cowboys, then I can understand it. I tend to be more of a player-driven guy as it is. Like, players win and players lose games. I think the Eagles have a really good roster. I think they need to get healthier in some spots.
You think they have a really good roster on defense?
Maybe I'm relying too much on names. They have looked slow the past 2 weeks. They also I really believe in this. I really believe in this defensive line. I believe in both edge rushers. I think that they can get penetration in the interior. And I mean, we did 5 shows last week. We discussed this. Like, I don't, the sack doesn't know what down it is, right? So the fact that you get to the quarterback as effectively as you do on first and second down, and you can't get there on third down, it just strikes me as such an odd thing there. I believe they can get to the quarterback, and I think this defense changes considerably when they get sacks. They had 70 sacks last year. That's why they were so good on defense. They did not have a sack in the Super Bowl. That's why they struggled in the Super Bowl, from where I stand.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance that this looks great, right? The defensive line comes out with their hair on fire, and they've got this easy schedule, and it's like, the Eagles are pressing all the right buttons. Kudos to them for getting ahead of this thing. That's a possibility. I don't think it's a likely possibility. Now, the schedule is what it is.
Yeah.
If Sean Desai was still the defensive coordinator, they were going to play better on defense over the next 4 weeks.
Yes, especially the Giants. Yeah, especially Giants, Cardinals, Giants.
Yeah, this game tonight is going to be interesting, and I we are going to learn a lot about the team tonight because there's all this turmoil going on, this dysfunction, it seems like. But if they can come out and, against a backup quarterback, beat the pants off this team and show that this is like they're much more like the team that they were, beating good teams than they are the team that got blown out the last 2 weeks. Great. This is a good test. This is another long week. They had to fly all the way across the country. There are plenty of excuses to be made. If they can shove those things to the side and like dominate this game on the line of scrimmage like they are capable of doing, you can feel a lot better. And all of a sudden, maybe you can get the 1 seed because the Niners just need 1 loss. But if they come out and struggle in this game and it's like all the same stuff we're seeing, they're not committing to the running game. Jalen is not seeing things. The defense doesn't look all that different. And, DK Metcalf is, catching balls over Keely Ringo and he's got 175 yards receiving or whatever it is. This thing could go really bad. I feel like it's a little bit on the precipice. So I'm excited for the game tonight. I'm excited to learn about the team.
So I have a question for you, and I shudder at the thought of asking it. A, because I don't want you to jump through the screen and like strangle me here in Seattle. And B, because it could also be another 2-hour podcast here. Okay. But does this make you think differently of Jonathan Gannon, number one? And number two, in a universe where the Arizona Cardinals hire Lou Anarumo, and Jonathan Gannon comes back this year, are we in the same spot right now? Like, was this personnel on defense and this schedule, was this on like a collision course for this to look like this against San Francisco and Dallas, no matter who was overseeing them, or if Jonathan Gannon was still here? Or do you say, wow, they had a top 5 defense last year, albeit against bad offenses, and if Gannon was still here, this would be different?
It doesn't make me feel differently about Jonathan Gannon. You are Mr. Ethics, first of all, and you could argue that the Eagles are in this position because of an ethical failing by Jonathan Gannon.
What was the ethical failing?
Not being honest about getting the Cardinals job. That is why they're here. That's why they don't have Vic Fangio as their defensive coordinator. Because
okay, well, I'll give you 30 seconds on
lying.
that. I'll give you 30 seconds on that. Like, no, Shane Steichen interviewed with the Colts more and longer than Jonathan Gannon did during that period. The only difference is the Cardinals did not request to speak to Jonathan Gannon when he spoke to them. So that was the only difference. So you're saying that had that request come in and Jonathan Gannon interviewed during the period when Shane Steichen interviewed, then Vic Fangio would have held off?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know if
100% yes.
Okay. I mean, you still don't know if Gannon gets that job, but okay. Anyways, it's not worth relitigating.
Okay. I think the defensive struggles right now are much more personnel driven and schedule driven than Desai driven. I think there are reasons to certainly be unhappy with Desai. To me, the rotation is the biggest thing. And that is one where I don't think like Jonathan Gannon would not have done that. He would have opted for rest for those guys more because we know that that's what he did the past 2 seasons. Now the game scripts were different, all that stuff, but that's a factor. Sean Desai's Sean Desai has more performances in a season in which he got fired ostensibly against more good performances against good quarterbacks than Jonathan Gannon had in 2 years, right? Like the game plan against the Dolphins and like the second half shutout against the Chiefs and the other one that I'm forgetting, like those are better than anything we ever saw in a game against a good quarterback from Jonathan Gannon. He got like diced up against every single good quarterback he played. And I appreciated the fact that Desai was willing to try things differently in game. Like he was willing to mess around and not just be static, doing the same thing all the time. I think that we'll never know if Sean Desai had last year's personnel on defense, like what he would do differently. Would he have still tried to do so much stuff, or would he have been more content to let the guys play it out? And we don't know what Jonathan Gannon would have looked like with this year's defense. My guess is that they would be just about as bad. So maybe I'm being stubborn, but it doesn't really change the way that I think of Jonathan Gannon as a defensive coordinator.
The other thing, and I'm hesitant to ask this too because I don't want to kind of fall in the tropes, but do you think personality matters in this sense? Jeff McClain had a quote in his story today from an anonymous source who said Sean Desai is a smart guy, but doesn't carry himself with like a lot of confidence or something of that nature. And we've seen defensive coordinators in the past, like Jim Schwartz, for instance, carried himself like he was in charge of the room, right? He could command a room. Do you think personality matters here? Do you think that is something that should be taken into account, or do you think that when someone loses their job or gets demoted, that you just kind of look for reasons and that's a convenient thing to say?
I think I would say it's somewhere in the middle. I mean, I think that stuff matters, and so do the interpersonal relationships. Like, I don't think that Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon are like best friends, but they had a working relationship over a long period of time. This was an arranged marriage to some degree with Sean Desai. They didn't really know each other. I think that's a real factor here. And if there are plenty of examples of like talented people who can be good at their jobs not being the right personality fit in that specific organization. So yeah, I think that could be a factor here.
Yeah, I think back to it's not thinking back. It was this week. I read a good story by Daniel Popper of the Athletic when he was talking about Brandon Staley, and he said he was like really smart, but he was too smart for his own good, and like that was an organizational thought. Okay, and so then last thing here. Or last thing from me, you might have more you want to ask, but you're doing the post game show tonight. I'm here in Seattle. I'll obviously go to Nick Sirianni's press conference tonight.
And by the way, we'll be at the Reading Terminal Market tomorrow. We got a full day of shows. The Eagles podcast is going to be at 2:30. Rich Hoffman and myself, and I think at the very end we're going to be joined by Baldy. So
I'm pissed off. I'm missing that. Yeah, I'm pissed off. I'm missing that. That's when I would have loved to be at. I did everything I could. I'm taking a 5:55 a.m. flight tomorrow here to try to get back, but we couldn't make it back for 2:30. Just didn't work out. But anyways, I'll obviously go to Nick Sirianni's press conference tonight. Sometimes I skip that to work the locker room, but here it's important to get Nick. What do you want to hear from Nick?
What the hell?
What the hell? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I want to know the timeline. I want to know, did he know when he told us on Tuesday that there were not going to be changes? Did he already know that he was going to make this change?
Yep.
Why? Why is Desai still here? Was this your own doing completely? Was there, were there player complaints? I want to know a lot of things, and now I don't know. He's not going to be honest about it, probably, but I want to see what web he weaves.
And then if Sean Desai does in fact hold his press conference on Wednesday, or what do you want to know from Sean Desai? Well, what's the?
I don't know. I feel like they can't do that.
Yeah. I mean, they're still calling him the defensive coordinator, right? Like at some point.
Well, that's another question for Nick: is what are his responsibilities then?
Yes. Yeah. So. And if they try to suggest like it's the same as an offensive coordinator who doesn't call plays, I mean, come on.
Yeah. I do think though that I think the 2021 example of Nick giving up play calling. I feel like in his mind that's a thing that like maybe this worked once before. We can go to it again. I think that's probably a factor for him.
Yeah, but Nick specifically gave up play calling to focus on game management.
Yeah, of course. It's not a one-to-one. It's not a one-to-one comparison at all.
Yeah, I think actually the one-to-one comparison is what was Shane Steichen doing when Nick was calling plays, right? He was feeding information. He was giving insight. He was coordinating the other coaches. That's probably what they'll say Sean Desai is doing. But look, I mean, Sean Desai is upstairs. Matt Patricia's downstairs. Matt Patricia's calling the plays. So, yeah, it's a.
Do you think Desai's even going to be on the headset? Think they give him a dummy, like a dummy channel?
No, I mean, and look, and that's why, like, there's a human element to this. Sean Desai is a smart guy. He's worked really hard to get to this point in his career. Like, I mean, everyone's had to work hard, right? But if you're familiar with Sean Desai's story, he didn't play. He didn't have like connections. He started off like at the way bottom, at Temple, and worked his ass off to get up. And spent 1 year with Chicago as the coordinator. The coaching staff gets fired. He goes to Seattle last year. He comes here, a place where he has all these connections, and it's like he worked his ass off to get to this point, and it lasted, 13 games. So yeah, on a human level, you feel for that, but as they say in The Godfather, that's the business they chose, right?
There you go. Good work by you getting ahead of DeVito week with a Godfather reference.
Can always use the Godfather quote.
All right. That'll do it for this episode of the PHLY Eagles podcast. We are back tonight. We got a kickoff show with Jamie Lynch ahead of the game, and then the post-game show where Zach will tell us what Nick Sirianni said after the game. And, oh, by the way, there's a game to be played. So a big Eagles day here in Philadelphia and on the PHLY Eagles podcast. Zach, enjoy the game. Are you able to share what you're doing after this episode ends?
Yeah, I'm gonna go check out Amazon from a loyal listener and viewer, Michael. I really appreciate it, and I'm a huge admirer of the company, and so I get to see.
You're a huge admirer of the company.
Yeah, of what they've built. I mean, it's pretty incredible to go from like an online bookstore to the a major driver in this in this world. So I'm really, and I'm staying in a part in Seattle, South Lake Union, which is, or South Union Lake, however you frame it, is which is like Amazon territory. There's Amazon. I was taking a walk this morning and I saw all these people going to work. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing. I'll do that for an hour or so, and then I'm excited to meet a bunch of listeners and viewers and readers. I want to say readers too. The writing really matters to me. allphly.com, who I'm going to catch up with at the game, who've been sending me emails over the past few weeks, and be doing that. And yeah, anytime there's a listener, viewer, or readers coming to an Eagles game, email me at zach@allphly.com, and I will see to it that we get a chance to meet.
All right. You know what? I got to talk about Christian Ellis, so I'll let you suckle up the teat of big business. We can both be self-parodies.
Fair enough.
All right. That'll do it for the PHLY Eagles podcast. Thanks to everybody for watching. Thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks to everybody for reading for Zach's purposes. We will talk to you later tonight. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.